This week, the Trump administration pushed forward on multiple economic fronts. States challenge a welfare overhaul as implementation deadlines approach. The president threatened severe sanctions against nations aiding Iran, while halting joint military exercises with South Korea. Trade tensions escalated as tariffs on Canadian goods took effect following collapsed negotiations. Meanwhile, federal debt crossed $40 trillion as interest costs continue rising. President Trump's welfare overhaul is facing significant resistance from states seeking to weaken its impact. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act introduces sweeping changes to food stamp eligibility and Medicaid work requirements, extending work obligations to able-bodied adults. But at least 30 states plan to allow Medicaid recipients to self-attest their medically frail status, a standard difficult for federal officials to verify. An additional 25 states and the District of Columbia acknowledged they could remove self-attesting recipients at the 6-month mark, then immediately allow them to re-enroll, effectively nullifying the reform. The Trump administration has roughly 2 years to enforce compliance before key provisions expire, with officials facing a choice between accepting state workarounds or pursuing audits, funding clawbacks, and litigation. President Trump has announced plans for sweeping economic sanctions against nations aiding Iran, describing the effort as the most crushing economic operation ever taken against any country. The threat follows the expiration Monday of a 60-day ceasefire between the United States and Iran with no diplomatic resolution. Treasury Secretary Scott Basin pledged to impose economic isolation on Iran like the world has never seen before. The administration is extending Operation Economic Fury, launched in April, targeting oil smuggling networks, cash transfers, and front companies circumventing existing restrictions. The UAE announced severance of all financial and economic ties with Iran, a move that came after its defense forces detected 2 ballistic missiles launched from Iran toward regional maritime traffic. Chinese businesses, the largest purchasers of Iranian oil, are expected to be central targets of the expanded sanctions policy. President Trump has ordered a significant reduction in joint military exercises with South Korea, cutting short the Ulchi Freedom Shield drills by 6 days. The exercises were originally scheduled to conclude August 27th, but Trump's directive mandates they end August 21st instead. The president cited his personal relationship with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, saying the full-scale drills sent a message he deemed hostile toward Pyongyang. South Korean officials expressed surprise, confirming they received no advance notice of the decision. The abrupt change marks a departure from traditional alliance protocols, where such strategic adjustments are typically discussed in advance. Approximately 28,000 American service members are stationed in South Korea under a decades-long mutual defense agreement. Military planners have since canceled several live training components and converted others into computer-based simulations. President Trump has delayed steep tariffs on Canadian goods for 3 days, providing negotiators a narrow window to finalize a trade deal. Trump announced he would suspend 50% duties on Canadian products, with enforcement originally set to begin Wednesday at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time. The tariffs would have applied to a wide range of goods under the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, including whiskey, dairy products, and hockey sticks, while excluding oil, gas, and potash. Trump invoked Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930, a provision never used before, as legal authority for the duties. He cited discriminatory Canadian policies against American exports. Canadian officials responded cautiously, with a senior representative stating the dispute has raised costs for families. If negotiations fail within the 3-day window, the tariffs will take effect, potentially raising costs for American consumers and prompting Canadian retaliation. The U.S. government's total debt has crossed $40.5 trillion, according to Treasury Department figures released this week. The milestone underscores the pace of borrowing. The nation accumulated $10 trillion in debt in less than 5 years, compared to the previous $10 trillion over a longer period. Interest payments on that debt have reached nearly $1.2 trillion this year alone, making them the third largest budget line item after Social Security and Medicare. The July budget deficit hit $432.3 billion, the highest monthly shortfall since March 2021. Treasury yields have surged since late June, complicating the government's financing position. The Treasury Department announced this week it is increasing bond repurchases to manage debt costs. Economists across the political spectrum have raised concerns about the sustainability of current fiscal trajectories as interest expenses consume an increasingly dominant share of the federal budget. The United States imposed 50% tariffs on $20 billion worth of Canadian products early Saturday, after trade negotiations collapsed. The Trump administration extended an original deadline by 3 days to allow deal-making, but talks ultimately failed to resolve the dispute. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said Canada declined to finalize an agreement. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney countered that the United States altered its negotiating position unfairly. Canadian negotiators sought sector-specific relief on steel, aluminum, automobiles, and lumber that the U.S. was not prepared to grant. Canada announced it would retaliate by matching U.S. tariffs dollar for dollar. The tariffs affect roughly 5% of Canada's annual exports. No further formal talks have been scheduled. The federal government has announced a 2-year plan to reduce water consumption from the drought-strained Colorado River. Arizona will shoulder the largest burden, cutting 760,000 acre-feet of water annually through 2028, followed by California at 440,000 acre-feet and Nevada at 50,000 acre-feet per year. The 3 lower basin states have committed to conserving an additional 700,000 acre-feet through 2028. This comes as lake levels fell to their lowest point since 1957 last month, with river flows down more than 20% since 2000. Arizona Department of Water Resources Director Tom Bushkatsky said the actions demonstrate what can be accomplished when states join together as part of the solution. The agreement sets the stage for long-term negotiations, but deepening disagreement between upper and lower basin states raises the prospect of extended legal conflict over this consequential water system. Florida's Democratic Senate primary produced a significant upset on August 19, 2026. State legislator Angie Nixon defeated Alex Vindman, the former National Security Council aide who had entered the race with national attention and significant name recognition. Vindman, best known as a key witness in the first impeachment proceedings against President Donald Trump, had been widely viewed as the frontrunner. Nixon, a progressive Democrat who has served in the Florida state legislature, told supporters following the projected outcome, "We deserve to thrive," as reported by NBC News. The result signals that Florida Democratic primary voters opted for a candidate with deeper state political roots over a nationally prominent figure. Nixon will advance to the general election for Florida's U.S. Senate seat, where Republicans hold a structural advantage in statewide races. A Democratic primary race for a Washington state Senate seat in Whatcom County is heading to a manual recount after the initial count produced a 4-vote margin. Michael Shepard received 13,125 votes compared to Eamon Collins' 13,121. The narrow result triggers an automatic hand recount set to begin next week and take approximately 3 days. The winner will face Republican Erica Crape in November for the 42nd Legislative District seat, which was vacated by Senator Sharon Shoemaker. County officials will certify results Tuesday, with state certification expected by Friday. Micron Technology has broken ground on a $50 billion expansion in Boise, its hometown, marking one of the largest corporate investments in Idaho history. The project includes 2 new chip manufacturing facilities and a research lab backed with $10 billion in funding over the next decade. The first fabrication plant is scheduled to begin operations in 2027, producing leading-edge memory chips domestically for the first time. The expansion is expected to create more than 17,000 new jobs in the region, with 3,500 positions directly at Micron. The move represents a significant shift in U.S. semiconductor strategy, bringing advanced memory production back from Taiwan, Japan, and and Singapore. However, the rapid growth is already straining Boise's housing market, with rental prices climbing 4.3% over the past year. Violent crime in the United States fell 9.3% in 2025 compared to 2024, marking the largest single-year decline since the FBI began tracking national statistics in 1936. Murder rates plummeted 18.1% to 4.1 per 100,000 people, the lowest level recorded in the FBI's nearly 90-year history. Robbery fell 18.5%, aggravated assault declined 7.2%, and rape fell 7.6%. Property crimes showed even steeper declines, with motor vehicle theft dropping 22.7% and burglary falling 15.8%. The improvements were broad-based across different city sizes. Juvenile arrests for violent crime also declined significantly, falling 5%. Early data for 2026 suggests the downward trend is accelerating. A 500,000-pound electrical transformer has arrived at 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania, marking the first major equipment delivery as the shuttered nuclear plant moves toward restart. The transformer, sourced from South Korea, is part of a larger effort by operator Constellation Energy to bring the reactor back online by summer 2028. The facility would supply 835 megawatts of carbon-free power to Microsoft data centers under a $1.6 billion electricity agreement signed in 2024. 3 Mile Island's Unit 1 ceased operations in 2019, but renewed demand from artificial intelligence infrastructure has prompted Constellation to reverse course. The restart would make 3 Mile Island only the second shuttered commercial nuclear plant in the U.S. history to return to service. That's the week from the American Star News. For complete coverage of every story in this briefing, visit theamericanstarnews.com and subscribe so you never miss the weekly review.